check. Mic check, mic check. 1 2 1 2 and 1 2 1 2. Check, 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 check. Hello. Hey, I am Darude, and I am in my studio, and I am going to do a little breakdown of my track called Rush today. And also, depending on how long that's going to take today, I'm going to show you a couple of tips how I treat or what I do with my kick drums, and also a little bit of drum tuning and even a little silent synthesizer sounds if I can get around to that. So first of all, how is everybody doing? I see there's several dozen of you at this point, and we are going to slowly but surely get to it. Let me see if I had anything particular in my notes that I needed to be looking at, and that is a no. All right. So, my track called Rush was a single, or the name track of the Rush album. Obviously, the name track, and it was not a single, but it was one of my favorite tracks on the album, and it had, to me, quite cool sort of beginnings, and I was very happy that I could work together with my friend Heikki Liimatainen, aka DJ Heikki L, who had his hands in several of the tracks productions for Rush album. He is a dear friend of mine, and he worked together with J16. At that time, they had an act together called Dallas Superstars that produced many great records that I've been playing over the years. And they've done all kinds of stuff together. And at that point, while I was still sort of under Jaakko's wing working on the second album, it was also a lot of Hessu's influence in many of the tracks. Jaakko sort of shared some of the production duties with Hessu, Heikki, and this was one of those. The track started actually at this skication. We went up north in Lapland, and in fact Hessu was with us and several other people from our circles, and one or two of those days when I was either before or after skiing, I would sit on my laptop on, back then, Cubase I used, and I was going through samples and tried to sort of suck the inspiration from the atmosphere. There were several producers and cool people at that in that cabin, and I every once in a while like pulled away from the crowd, went to my room, and was just working on stuff. And the first thing that I made was this sort of gnarly sample that actually starts the album mix, or made and or found. Let's start, pull the line up. This one. Good eye, Australia. I didn't say Tiesto was with me. No. Hi, Rob. Good to see you, mate. Statics in the house. Sausage Gaming is in the house. Rapatunki. Sir Black Knight. Over Karma. Okay, I'm gonna press pause here. Well, wrong software. There we go. So I came up with the screeching sample. There were a couple of things that I don't know. I just liked it. This is that sample bounced with tape delay, and that's actually from like Future Music or Computer Music magazine sample CD sample pack that came with those back then, and I would have just gone through them, liked some, discarded some, and then this was just a 138 BPM project that I would slice up certain samples and go from one sample to the other and tune some samples to fit the others and whatnot. And at that point, I didn't know this track was going to be G minor track. It was just this original sample and some similar-ish drums that we have there now, or some of them are definitely still there. And then that delay. And then I created a bass line, just regular sort of pumping, similar to this again, bass line. And that's the thing that I had first, was just driving trance drums of that era, the pumping bass line, and then this sort of mean or gnarly or screechy sound. And then I had something melodic to go with it, but right now, actually, can be honest, I don't remember exactly what it was, because that project in Cubase is still somewhere, but I haven't looked at that in a long time. But then I would take this to Jaakko, and Jaakko suggested that, hey, how about you work with Hessu on this one? He felt that Hessu would be sort of grasping what I was after better than he, or something like that at that point. And sure enough, with Heikki, we came up with sort of the idea for the track, like putting soothing or smooth pads and nice chords, and then there's the plucky lead that comes in against sort of that screechy sample. And I can show you the project. It's there. And then in Hessu Studio, we worked on this, and actually at one point Hessu sort of took over for the melodic part here in the breakdown. He's largely responsible for the chord progression and the melody, final melody. The bits we were working sort of on together, but this is our collab, I guess 50-50 points. I don't remember exactly the point divisions, but he deserves a good bunch of credit for here too. We went to the breakdown. Vicious Code, hi. M. Donnell is here too. Good eye, mate. How's the train? Choo choo. Nice. So here are those the kick is about the same kick that we use almost on every track on Rush album. Several of the same hats and loops as well. .909 snare coming from under a filter and a little bit of reverb. We go here and listen to the drums a little bit. We can take clap like that with the kick. 909 hat. This sort of, the name of the sound is Herre Haitsu. It's like weirdo hi-hat because it's sort of pitching up and down. Closed hats. A big 909, but it's distorted. Another closed hat. A big one, big clap on top of the other one. Another hi-hat, a little bit of loop, and then right on top of that and the snare. And here we go to the breakdown. And so as this was 2002, we were still working with quite a bit of hardware too. So for instance, this one here, that's from a Virus. I believe Heikki Hessu at that point had a Virus A. Then there's a pad. I don't remember what this is from actually. That's also a bounce thing. Then there's JP 8080 that we used for this. And as you can see, this is just one wave file here, and there's nothing in the channel strip. So this was bounced out of or recorded out of JP 8080, and then there's a flanger or phaser on top of it. That's one of the bass lines. That one giving it some rhythm. And the wow bass, it's actually ES1 from Logic, and that ES1 was brand new back then. Like, I think we must have been on Logic 5, which at that point was still on both Mac and PC, but 5.51, I believe, is the last Logic version that worked on a PC. And Jaakko had just recently switched his system to Logic, and I think Hessu had been on Logic for a little while. And we were sort of quite new on these, for instance, the ES1 and 2, but started right away using stuff that was possible inside the DAW in the computer. But then right alongside of it is the virus that is obviously bounced from the hardware. And the kick comes from the Logic sampler, and then it was actually EXS24. But you know what, guys? You'll see a historic moment in my studio right now. This is the first time I've actually opened the sampler in Logic, because the new Logic 10.5 came last week. The upgrade update came last week, and I haven't actually tried it until now, so yay. But this sampler works exactly as EXS24 and a bunch more, so it opens the old sample instruments and everything exactly like it used to. And so this is just one kick bounced out of like a kick loop that we used. And like I said, this was used pretty much on all tracks in various forms on the Rush album. And and now at that point, two things change or start. One is the stab, and it's called stab delay here. It's again in the sampler, but the original sound comes from Jesus Supernova, the blue synth, the other blue synth, and it's well, it was pretty much an easy thing to sample because it doesn't really change. There's no nothing big modulation wise and whatever, but there, and it's just a and very simply tape delay after it. I believe this was EQ'd a little thinner before bouncing for the sampler, but we made a sampler of it very early on, or sampler instrument, because Jaakko didn't have Supernova at that point, neither did I. So what we did at Heikki's place, we needed to be able to replicate later, and so this is that here. And then, like I said, two things start. Everything else goes on pretty much the same, but then that melody starts, and then this underneath it. And crazy enough, it's just one sample. And And let me check that. It has to be... Yeah, so this is playing... Now I need to figure out this... As you can see on the MIDI here, all of them are overlapping, so it's basically bending from one note to the other. And there's a tiny amount of, what do you call that? Glide from one sample or one note to the other. And that's why it's just a continuing sound. Yeah, I think it's haunting too. And then a little bit of a change. Seeker. Hi, Morwick. Warwick, I had a really nice weekend, relaxing, cleaned up the house a little bit, hung out with the kids a good bit, tried my best to sleep, but I don't know if I was successful with that. Hung out with the wife a little bit, avoided crazy big conflicts with anybody in the family. The usual happened every day. And all is well. So these were crucial. Chemistry pad. I don't remember which synth this is from, to be honest. Oh, it could be, yeah, what is that? The Yamaha synth, I think Hesu had that, yeah, a Yamaha one. And then Money Pad comes from Chiton. This was used a lot by us back then. Oh boy. Your cord just fine, sir. And so here's something I do often still. Look, this bass starts here, and then I just need to extend the note. So here we have actually a straight crossfade. Often I do an, what do you call that? Exponential crossfade. So it, now if you listen carefully, it actually dips down a little bit. But I do a lot of stuff after the fact with audio edits. The same happens here in the end. We have the breakbeat going on. There's pads under there, and they all just go one note in the end here. Now I have to say that right now I don't actually remember if I made the song like this for the album or is this a gig edit, because I used to play a gig edit with breakbeats in the end so that I could mix almost whatever in it. Because the extended mix would normally have these beats here in the end. I think this is a gig edit that I made for myself a long time ago. What else is there? Oh, the effects. So, and this is a newer project. A couple of years ago, I cleaned it up a little bit, and that's why I have these stacks going on here. It's called stacks in Logic, and those are basically groups of sounds that go through like mix buses. And so I have my effects here, and those are just sort of standard, something like that. A little bit of crowd noise there. I got better ones these days. Oh, that's so typical. I still use that, and that's just a nice 909 crash. I don't think there's much more there. Oh, this one. Yeah. What is there? Yeah. That was part of that sample dry. It's interesting to look at these after, you know, quite many years and sort of get in, you know, get back to the time these were made and trying to figure out what I was or we were thinking at the time. Does anybody have anything specific to ask about the track? I could try and break it down even more for you. And I can also, one thing that I definitely can do is I have some notes of something here. There, no. If I'll just find my notes. Oh, come on. Maybe oh, there we are. So, yeah, this was made early 2000, winter, I guess. I started it. My studio's Heikale Studio and JS16 Studio. And I had Genelec 1030s, as Jaakko did as well, for monitoring. And we all had JP8080. Jaakko had Nord Rack 2, and I had Triton, and he did too. I had an MS2000R, which did he as well. He had an ASR 10 sampler, and then Hessu had the Supernova, and they both had some Yamaha, like is it C2X or I never had those, so I don't remember the exact numbers. And then we were using SS24, ES1, and ES2 from Logic. Most used samples in the project. Most used plugins is the sampler basically, and ES1. I don't think we had ES2 at this point because it's not here. And the rest of the stuff is audio from the hardware synths. Jaakko was a fan of Waves EQs at that point, and we used some of those. And then I don't know if there's any specific sort of tricks that are worthy mentioning. Let me see what you're asking. Oh, no. Okay, cool. The crossfading the yellow thing here. No, that's just crossfading the sample with itself. So here, if I show this on the bottom, you see the whole sample. That's just one long bass drone. But it modulates here in the end. Like this, so the filter was open towards the end when it was recorded, which I didn't want in this part of the track. So instead of having it all the way, and it's not long enough, all the way through the sample like that, I just found a spot that I thought would loop okay. And actually, that's what it is. I basically cut it from, what is that? That's half a bar. And then copied and pasted it, and then between those samples, this one and that one, there's a crossfade. So it just eliminates any big clicks and pops and whatever in the actual transition part where it goes from one sample to the other. So it's just kind of like if you had two tracks, you would fade one in, one out. Aliena, is the dog okay now? I hope so. Okay. Tortsu, hyvä kuuluu. Teemu, kiitos. En tiedä olenko hyvä näyttelijä, mutta oli hauskaa tehdä se. All right, and so then I believe this track on Spotify is here. Then if somebody's interested in Logic, that's the link to Wikipedia page on Logic. We did not use sidechain compression back in the day. I actually was a very slow and stubborn producer to adapt it. I had some sort of a thing about not wanting to sidechain because there were tracks, there were producers who used to do a lot of sidechaining, and especially like the time of Benny Benassi's Satisfaction, I sort of one of those tracks that started it, I guess, in a big commercial way, and then everything was pumping. And even when I was working on my third album, labeled this in 2007, 6, 7, 8, whenever, yeah, it came out in 7 first, so around 6 and 7, I was so against it because I didn't want to be like, I don't want to follow everybody doing the same sidechain pump thing, which was stupid of me because I should have. I had some of that stuff in some of my tracks, but I actually tried to hide it as much as I could. So what I would, for instance, do is I would use sidechain ducking, but at that time we didn't have such complicated and cool tools as Shaperbox or LFO tool and what have you, where you can sidechain duck different frequency ranges in different ways. So I would, for instance, do I would use an EQ that I would automate to duck when the kick hit. It would, duck say to 120 hertz, and then the automation would come back during the first, I don't know, 8th or 4th, and so every time a kick hit, the EQ would duck it. And because the plug-in delay compensation wasn't exactly dead on, and it still is not, you would have to actually delay have the the low cut automation be a little early so that it would hit it right. So that was technically it, but I didn't want people to hear it. I just wanted the low end to duck. These days I use several things and actual sidechain compression as well, but mostly LFOs, whether it's a shaper box or similar, that then just duck however I want and on 3 frequency ranges. But there are certain tracks that really benefit out of the sound of the ducking, and then there are certain tracks that don't need it, and in fact it could be like slowing down or breaking the groove, but you still a lot of times want to have sidechain ducking happening, especially even though you don't want to hear it, because it makes so much room for the kick sounds and well other stuff too, and it's a mixing tool at least as much as it's a style or that sucking sound tool for me. Yep. All right. Wow, there's, I know, separate ducking for those ranges. That's crazy. Um, hold on. How did so much of the Rush album sound the same? Well, I know what you mean, but then at the same time, I would disagree. Like if you listen to if you do listen to those, and if you do break them down, there are several key elements on some of the tracks that are the same. Like we used a lot of the same kicks and some of the hi-hats and claps and whatnot. But then several of the lead sounds that are there, for instance, in this one, none, I don't think another track uses the same. Well, Bittersweet, I think, has a similar plucky sound to it, but then several of the other pad sounds are different. It also has the airy sort of almost like choral pad that not many of them have the same way. Serendipity is quite different from anything else. But I mean, I'm not going to argue. You're right. If you listen to the whole Rush album, you feel. But I felt and we felt at the time that it was just in line with each other, like the tracks were fitting on the same album. But then on the third album that I produced on my own, I definitely had an idea and a goal to add just pieces of music and not think of them having to be in specific genres. And the same was going on with more so with moments that I just wanted to make music and it wasn't about specific things. They just became whatever they became. Um, cool. Michelson, which one? Which question? Okay, yeah, that one. Oh, cool. Yeah, I know. No, I have this, I'm testing this, and I know the square is on, and I don't know how to take it off. I just actually fired it up today. It's not my camera, I'm testing it, and this is quite cool, minus the focus thing. The tracking is really good, the eye tracking. But it's EOS R, and the quality is definitely very nice. But like you cleverly noticed, and thank you for reminding me of that. It has the eye tracking on and the tracking square on, and I didn't quickly find where to turn that off. Cool. All right, so Marana, yes, I agree. For instance, you're absolutely right. Almost every time my track goes in a break, there's an automation on either master or one of the frequency ranges where I take the ducking down. Sometimes not all the way, because a little bit of pulsing in a breakdown might be good, so that people would actually know when something is going to happen, or they're in the back of their head, even if there's no beat, they can then like count, oh, here's the beat, how I know how it is, and that actually helps sometimes with the interest of the track, or people's attention spans, or people's comfort level, because sometimes people might feel awkward if they don't know where the beat is. But having the full-on pumping or full frequency pumping especially can definitely be distracting in a breakdown where you don't have the kick that should actually mask that gap. So yeah, I definitely agree. And in a breakdown where you would have like big lush synth pads or whatnot, I mean, it definitely takes away from the effect if you make it pump just for no reason, full on. Jessica, thanks for stopping by. Uh, Senegal, I don't think sidechain ducking has much to do if you don't get the pianos to sound clear in the break. I mean, I don't know what kind of breakdowns you do, but it sounds that your levels might be then whatever you have with the pianos. If that's like synth pads and whatnot, might be too loud for the breakdown and the pianos don't cut through. Or if you did want to, you could technically, use some sidechain ducking, so the pads or whatever are masking your pianos would duck down a little bit on the frequency range where the piano needs to cut through, and you need to determine that. So a dB or a few dBs, or just the mid channel of mid-side combo, have that duck a little bit so as to make room for the piano. But other than that, in the breakdown, it shouldn't be that busy that you need to somehow work really hard to get the piano to cut through. Maybe that's just more like a volume level thing. Yeah, well, that's true too. Bring back the pumping towards the drop, or towards a transition spot in during the build up or breakdown. There are many songs on my albums that didn't make it to the album, but it was more like not after we made them, because the first two albums were sort of full-on collaborative efforts between first me and Jaakko on the first one, and then Jaakko, myself, and Heikki on the third one, where I would present demos and ideas, and then we'd either start building from there or not. And I mean, yeah, we would never really bring something to like almost being finished and then decide, hey, let's not put it. Like, we would know early on if we wanted to work on something until, you know, getting it done and then putting on album. There might be 1 or 2 tracks that we decided for a reason or another on the first 2 albums not to include. But that's actually one of the reasons why Jaakko and I parted ways. And I don't think this is such a big secret, and there wasn't really any sort of ugliness about it. But but by the time I was working on the third album, or we started working on the third album, it was supposed to come out on Jaakko's label still, and I presented tracks to him that I thought would be like 50 to 70% there, like actual tracks, and many of them at that point he wanted to work more on, or like pull apart and rebuild and maybe take to other directions. And after I took 1 track too many, whatever the number was, but several to him, like suggesting like, here's the first track we should start building or finishing for my album, and he would have liked to do something else with it, or like take 1 part when I thought that it was already like almost a done track, and I just wanted him to final produce it and mix it. And then we just saw differently about my music, and then we just while it was sort of awkward for a while because we had gotten used to working together, and he was my, you know, support system and mentor and whatnot. But then we just had to come to a conclusion that I'll be better off working on my own, so we don't have to like go back and forth about tracks and me being disappointed, him not seeing the same thing I did and whatnot. So then I started working on the third album on my own. But that's even still not the same thing, and nobody forced me to do anything. So I just decided, or we decided basically together that, well, hey, you know, no harm feelings, let's try this. And then I went to then Helsinki Music Company, and they figured it out because I was still under Jaakko's contract, but then he let me go and signed to Helsinki Music Company at that point. And I still worked on Tell Me on the third album with both Jaakko and Heikki. They were kind enough to help me, even if you know, there was some technical stuff that I needed sorted. And you know, it was something I needed to do for myself, and probably for artistic reasons, for like direction as well. And I felt that at that point I was good enough a producer technically to take on the production duties. And I had learned so much, well, you know, about everything from having sat in the studio with Jaakko producing those things together, that the first 2 albums. So so at that, but that it was needed at that time. And I actually was quite crazy about having to do everything myself on the third one. But then on the fourth one, I sort of returned back a little bit, but in a different way, because on Moments album, I wanted other people to come and get involved. But now this time was different because I was the one who was sort of, you know, on top of everything. So I got to decide who, how, when, and I got to say no or yes if I didn't like something, or if I did like something. And being that kind of producer, I final mixed and produced everything myself, except the Beautiful Alien track, the first single, was mixed by Arttu Pelja. I just wanted his vision on that. But then and I produced and final produced everything here in my studio as well. But I had several co-producers, and I enjoyed that a lot too. Like, it was cool to be like admitting to myself that some stuff some people are better at, and I can just collaborate with them and get that better stuff from them. But then I was able to put it all together myself, and it's a really cool way of working. And I felt ownership of everything, yet there were several writers and producers other than me on the album as well, so that was cool. But I do know a lot of people who go to labels and they, you know, try to change them somehow, change the direction and whatnot. But you're correct, though. Like for me, if I now make a track and I want to release it on a label, whatever it is, I go and offer it to them and they either take it or not. There's very little back and forth, really. It's such a cutthroat thing that there's very few places these days that like develop you. You just are good and your stuff is released ready or not, and then that's how it goes. So I've had several tracks that I've offered somewhere over the years and didn't get released. But then also those tracks are still there, and they are either something that I'll put out myself at one point or put out on another label, or I'll be able to use them as a foundation for a remix, for instance, or whatever. So that kind of production work doesn't really go to waste in that sense. And that's how, because I'm now sort of a free agent. I'm not signing with anybody for long term, maybe single or 4 at a time or something like that, and then I'm free to go back and forth. Like I've now done Armada, there's been Garuda and Black Hole in the last 2 years. Is it true that most labels rather want something that sounds like their stuff? Absolutely. If you look, well, I don't want to name names. It doesn't, but it just makes sense, you know. If you have a good sound that your fan base likes, you know, why steer too far away from it? I'm not saying you shouldn't try something new, but it just sort of makes sense. But then there's a really, really fine line that you know, of getting people tired of your sound. So if your sound is just repeating itself all the time in many ways, but I mean, you could have similar sounds with different BPMs. You could have similar sounds with male vocals and female vocals, and you could have, you know, trancey sounds, but have different drums, or you could have some combining factor that is always there, but then the content would otherwise be different. You know, there are those as well. But then, and then there's huge sort of mother labels that are under which is umbrella. There's many different ones. So there's sort of like quality control, release control high up, but then there's sub labels that have, you know, deep or more commercial, or, you know, more left field something, or dubstep this and that, and house this and that, and several, you know, techno this and that. And then that covers the thing that if you would take it to the main label, they might be like, well, we don't want to sign it, but how about you go to the A&R below us on the techno side or trance side or whatever, and then you sort it out there. Because the main label often is like the most commercial one too, if you think of those kind of umbrella things. Cool. So let's listen to this a little bit still from the first breakdown. Let's see. Thank you, Phase 221. All right, fellow humans. So that's my track called Rush. And for those who came in later, these Monday streams are bits of music, bits of talk, and I will be DJing on Fridays, and then on the Wednesdays there will be a chat thing where I call you people after you send me a message in on WhatsApp, and then I also have a peer call. Like last week, I had a call with the lovely Paavo Siljamäki from Above and Beyond and Anjuna Beats fame. And then who else I've had? Luke Bond, Andy Moore earlier weekends, Prof, and Mayon so far, I think, and I'm gonna keep on doing those on Wednesdays. Right now, is there a track in your mind that you would like me to break down like this? I would just take a shout and we'll see a couple of the first ones and I'll pick those for next week, and then we'll have a little bit of a Twitter voting going on. Is there a track that you would like me to break down like this next week? All right, it's Beautiful Alien Stars. Cool. Let's do this. Tiny little Twitter window. Put that back where it belongs. Okay, Feel the Beat is a suggestion. Cool. I'll write these down for myself here, and we'll figure it out. Where did I put it? There. So, Stars, Feel the Beat, Beautiful Alien. Can be remixes as well. We didn't do Midnight Train. It was a suggestion for this one, but did not win. All right, Sandstorm and Out of Control. Well, Sandstorm is not going to happen right now. It will at some point. Trust me, it will. Out of Control I did actually a couple of weeks ago, and it's a little tricky one because I don't have all the Out of Control samples. I don't have the full project like I do this because I don't have the first album projects. They were made on a different system, and it was mostly in Jaakko's studio, so I don't have access on all of those because he doesn't have all that gear anymore. But I did a little breakdown 2-3 weeks ago on a Monday. There was Out of Control and Calm Before the... no, Out of Control alone, yeah. Check out the stream. You'll find it. The VOD is on Twitch. Sandstorm at some point later. Surrender is a contender. Also, I don't have full Surrender final thing. I have only the stems because Ashley Walbridge, my collaborator on it, did the final stems bounces, but I have my pre-project and then I have the stems master project, so I can easily show that as well. Okay, so Release Me is one. So we have plenty, and now I am the dictator, and what I've done the last few weeks, I've checked out, sort of picked different era 3 options. So I'm gonna select the Midnight Train one, just dictator-like again. Let's do that. And then we're going to do Stars. That was, I think, maybe the first suggestion. And then, so those are all the ones. Which one are we going to do? Beautiful Alien or Surrender? Tuika True, thank you for the raid. Welcome. Tracking Treasure down. Cool. Okay, so let's do Beautiful Alien. That's it. So Midnight Train, Stars, and Beautiful Alien. That's the 3 that we're gonna vote for next next week. And give me a quick sec. I'm going to create the poll right quick, and it's a little bit bigger poll, adding 1. So let's do Stars here with me, Midnight Train mix, and then it's Beautiful Alien. So those 3. Let's do 6 days, and the poll starts 8 is next week. Boom. And then we go copy link to tweet and do this. Boom. So you can go and vote, and guys, those ones who didn't get yours, possibly next time. And I've got quite a lot of the back catalog stuff, and I'm gonna keep doing these here and there. I don't know if I'll keep doing these every week like I have now, but I will be doing these from here on. I find it cool to look back, and if somebody learns or is interested and gets something out of it, that's very cool. And so now, what I wanted to show you guys is, I can do it in this project. Let's take a software instrument, empty channel strip. Actually, we can go and get silent here. Are there any silent users? Synth bus. You guys know this plugin? Let's make the size a little bigger so we see better. Boom. Okay, so silent. It's already an old synthesizer, and it's just such a nice one. It's basic one. Well, I don't want to say basic in a negative way, but basic virtual analog modeling synth. has this sort of basic oscillator setup, oscillator 1 and 2, and then 2 parts, so you can layer 2 parts and mix between them however you want. And I'm not going to be teaching this synth like that, but I can show you something that I was a little bit involved in, not much, but a little bit. So go to Bank Factory and Bank 5 and Artist, and then go to 2. So there's 4 banks of, well, in one bank there's 4 pages of 128 presets, and if you go to 130, you'll find me. Do I have any Robert Miles remixes in my discography? No, I don't, unfortunately. So in these presets, I've done a couple of the things that are a little similar to what I've used. For instance, here, this is called ARP FTB, so Feel the Beat 16th. And if you okay, so that's so now let me go and see if maybe ARP. Maybe that one. Drag that on. Let's see what happens. No tempo info. Thank you. And let's go here, solo it, and loop it. And it's a little high, so we're gonna make it okay, so we can see actually going to take that out and add a little bit of delay from here. My favorite delay is Waves H delay. Interesting. Take a little bit of the low end out. All right, so and I have assigned the filter cutoff on mod wheel, like you can see from here. Hey, Nick Wax is in a house. All right, so that is the first one. I'm going to just actually copy this sound and go to the next silent and go to the next sound. This is a bass sound that is also has the filter on the mod wheel, and it's very it's a square bass sound, and you could use it just as a long bass. It has a little bit of a modulation on the sustain, but I would use this with a kick. Now that delay is a little too much. There's a little bit of delay on itself, so let's see. There's a little bit of reverb as well, but you can take those out. Okay, we can listen to. Let's take. Where are we? So. Did that do anything? And we're gonna do a little quantize. And we would do here, I would do shaper box, I would do sidechain compression on the low end, starting there, and something like that. Let's add one more audio thing right quick. I mean software instrument actually. And where are my drums? Kick 2, we can do a mono, and just this. Let's see what we have here. I didn't have the click on, so that was off. Okay. Okay, so we have a little bit of kick going on. All right, so what am I going for here? I'll quickly build this so we have a little bit of a, that is a bass. I do those brown. Okay, so. next silent, we can take the shaper box off of that and see. So bass, quarter pulse bass. Just not sure if I want to use that on anything here, but let's put the while this, yes, I did. Why did it do that? Come on. Flatten, boom. Let's do this like this then. And then one more. So I don't know if you guys like silent, but I use it in pretty much all my productions. Oh. Well, we could use that as well maybe, but I'm not creating a full track here, so I don't know if that's needed. Next silent, and this is something that I really like. This kind of I'll go through these. Actually, I'm going to turn the... No, let's just keep at 138, whatever. Okay. So here we go. Wow, that is a big silent. I don't normally have it exactly as big as that, but so that's a very sort of, if you allow me, it's sort of a dead mousy or a sound or pumping eighth note thing that Joe at one point made very sort of famous, at least for his own sound. And then we have this one. You can take that off. And so we're going to do see. to copy those. Where's that coming? Going there. All right, so first one is the Silent that has the number 131 on bank number 5, which is the artist bank of Silent, and it's ARP FTB. So I've sort of modeled it after the ARP that comes actually from the Nord Rack too. Okay, and so it's a short, plucky or attacky sound, but it has this. It's a poly. Actually, no, this is not. Either way. All right, and then the next one is, it's this bass. And then this one. Morwick. I've met Joel several times. He's a nice guy. I can I don't know if he sees this and kicks my ass next time, but I can see sometimes where people would think that he's whatever, mean dude or something like that. But I think Joel, um I'm challenging you on this, guys. So if you still remember, or if you have access to something that was on his Twitch and he caused some stir somewhere, read through them and try and catch him of a lie, or try and catch him of a thing that he falsely said that somebody is. Like, he called out Madonna for, I don't know, Molly comments in front of a, whatever big festival crowd in Miami, and thought that it was not really kosher talking about Molly, whether that track is about Molly or not or whatever, but you could argue. And there are several things like that where he got quite a big uproar or whatever reaction from the crowd, but never, or at least very rarely, I would say, it was not actually sort of correct or something. I'm not sure I would say stuff like that poignantly or that attackingly or that whatever, but that's just his style. And he was and is known for that, though he hasn't been active on Twitch and Twitter in a long time like that either. But he, when you talk with him and when you have him sort of on your side or on sort of similar or whatever level, he's just the nicest dude. He's such a talented dude as well on many levels, and in many ways, like the studio stuff that he works on, be it like hip hoppy beats or be it electronic dance music, be it chill, whatever he's put his hands on, he knows his shit. He knows his studio stuff, production wise, mixing wise, and I mean Atmos system in the studio, and he's smart as shit. So I don't have anything bad to say about Joel. On the contrary, he's a really nice guy like that. But also, I think he made a wise choice where he realized that it might not be beneficial for him at some point to be just pissing people off all the time online, whether he'd be right or wrong. I think, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I played with him at the TwitchCon a couple of years ago. Shared the stage with him. He played a rockin' set, and I did my best as well. I played close by where he lives. I played in Waterloo, which is not far from where he lives in Canada, and I visited him a couple of times and hung out with him for a little bit here and there. But he's a very private person, and obviously I respect that as well. And I'm just I hope that he feels some mutual respect towards me that I do to him. Like, he's done such a huge thing for dance music on his own part. So I hope he continues on that, and I hope that he's whatever he's doing, he's successful at, and I believe he is. Okay, so that was a look at Silent and the presets that I have contributed to the amazing synth that is Silent. And those were put in, the artist packs were put in maybe 2 years ago or something like that, and I'm sure at some point when there's a new version, there's going to be probably more. But I mean, there's very Corstens, there's Armins, there's many a good bunch of tracks. Yeah, you know, if you look at it, FC is very Corsten, Armin, Matt Law. I think, well, we can actually check if it plays out. Benno, who is Armin's production partner as well. Seven Skies. Who else is here? Kill the Noise, DJ Fresh, Art of Fighters, Korsakov, CAT Scan, Accelerator. Cool sounds, and I mean, if you know the sounds of your favorites, like Armin or whatever, you'll definitely find something that you recognize from those, you know, recent tracks. There's an Aoki one, Laid Back Luke, F Tampa, Jordy Daz. Should definitely check those out if you haven't yet. And then you could go and check out those people's music with new ears and see if you can check them out or find them there. And while I am at it, I was thinking of talking about kick drums a little bit. And so here's one way of doing a kick drum, and that is a kick plugin. Actually, like literally a kick plugin, Kick 2. And so this is a kick drum generator, and it also has the click part, so you can add a sample of various attacks. This comes with a million presets, and I don't want to really cover all of those. This, let's see, which one was it that was sort of my go-to? Or was it just this default? It's trans. Well, it doesn't matter. We can use this one as the example. Okay, so I obviously changed that sound to something else. That needs to be there. So the kick. What do you want in a kick drum? In my kind of music, I want a solid low end. I want it to have an attack that kicks or comes through. And then also the frequency of the tuning of the track and the length is very important. It could have, like here, you could have a separate tick, click, snap in the beginning, the attack part, and then how quickly it fades out is important. Like if you think of trance records with, say, this kind of arpeggio that has a little bit of low frequency at this point there as well. And we can do, we can actually put a little bit of a shaper box there too, because then we don't have to EQ it as harshly. Boom, let's see, 200, 300 hertz, and this kind of thing, for instance. Come on, let's do, if we listen to it, whoops. Okay, so boom. So now you're listening to only the low end. and you're listening to the sidechain ducking happening. Now I took this to 0. We could make it 20%. It's ducking a little bit all the way. A little cleaner difference between them. So now. Okay, so what's important here is, and I'll demonstrate, I'll put a another shaper box here, but I'm not, this one doesn't do anything. I just use it for visuals. And so let's do this. Let's see. Here's my kick. Now if I take the kick out, oh boy, sorry. Let's well, let's do this. So now you see how long the kick is, right? The kick is almost the length of the whole fourth, and in my production, having not a monotonous thing, it doesn't really fly to do it like that. So I would say more like in a 400 millisecond mark, if even that. Now we're looking at the pitch curve, and that can be right there. If we're looking at the amp curve, now that I actually changed the length, so we can make this a little, I don't know, something like that. Well, something like that. And after listening to the longer one, this sounds a little stubby and short, but trust me, if you have bass in there, like this one, you want it, let's turn that down a little bit too, a little loud. So look at if I take the bass, the kick out, and if I were to go to this shaper box and only have this playing, now we can see that the first fourth, or hold on, is that just like a 16th, is quiet here. Well, I don't want to do that. Boom. So this part here is now quiet. This is being ducked, like kind of like a first 16th. And now if we start the kick on it, we can compare where the kick length is and how it works. It might look like very visual approach of doing things, and it is, but it's really cool when with something like this kind of display, you can actually not only hear, but you can see what's happening. And the fact is that if you have a bass sound going on top of a kick's audible bass sound, they are, if they're perfectly in phase, they're fine, but if they are clashing in phase, they are either hugely piling up or sucking each other out. So it is worth knowing how long your kick is and what kind of curve does your sidechained ducking bass low end especially have, because you might want to tweak one or the other or both to make room for the low end, and the exchange happens so that there's solid bass where you want there to be, but so that the bass things are not clashing. So you can also basically have the bass louder when you're making more room, we can actually shorten this. If you touch more, I don't know. That's fine. And so we have, let's see what these, this is the tick we have here. There's just one, but you could actually have 3 on this. You could compress the whole thing if you wanted to. You could distort the whole thing if you wanted to. You could EQ with this plugin. This I'm just actually quite fine with how this is here right now. But the amazing thing about a plugin like this, there are others, but I like this a lot. And actually now Logic has a new drum designer that is really looking sweet as well. Might not have this kind of control exactly, but it's very nice as well. So with this, you can now just adjust anything and everything about the kick drum as you please. And one of the things that you want to adjust, or at least be aware of, is the tuning of the kick drum. And so this one is amazing because you can actually see how it's tuned. This is now G sharp and going down to G, but because I would actually be inclined to just do all the way G because it's a short one, and then because we're this track now, we are let's, where are my pads at? There. That's an F minor, and then there's a C sharp. Yeah, C sharp and F minor. So I actually have, at least here they have, there's just 2 chords obviously in this short bit, but they have 2 notes in common, and that is an F. So let's see, just for shits and giggles. And mind you, this actually comes down from A, A4 to F. So let's see if. Okay, so how about that? I'm not sure if that's exactly where I want it to be. But what I do with kick tuning, for instance, here now I could, let's. Is that it? When it's that long, it definitely is a G. So, but then here, we could maybe see if we can. I don't know if this is the best kick sound right now, but it pays off to pay attention to the kick tuning, because if it works with your bass line, the key of your track, it definitely will enhance your track. I'm looking for a Now it's only picking the... No. So I put the reverb on there because sometimes if you find it hard to determine what the tuning of any drum sound is because they are so quick, if you put a reverb on it, if you can't adjust the tail, then you can, of the reverb, you can sort of hear the tone or tuning. Of a kick drum, depends on the track, depends on a drum machine, drum sample. You want to listen to how low, or how the low end sounds. Does it have enough low end? Then if it doesn't, is it a matter of EQing it? Does that give you low end? Or is it a matter of giving it a little bit of distortion, like harmonic distortion, that adds a little bit weight there? Or do you like the tick of your kick drum, but then otherwise you can't EQ or whatever to sound good? Then you can low cut it to, I don't know, whatever it is, like 500 hertz or even higher, and then you can find a sub, almost like a sine wave thing that you put under it, and that creates the bottom end of it, but then you use the tick or whatever sound you had, you liked about your kick. And then, like, an example of what I learned quite early was that when we were working on my first album tracks, basically first Sandstorm and other stuff with JS, and he had a real 909, TR-909, where the kick is from on the first album, pretty much every track. You would add a little bit of low end to the lows, like under 100 hertz or something like that, maybe 60. I don't remember what the frequency was. But then you'd actually had to dip down, notch down from like 240 or something hertz, because there was this knock of the, like, honk or knock or whatever you would call it, of the kick drum, and it was very specific to that Jaakko's 909, because I've heard tons of 909 samples since and emulations, and it doesn't work the same way with other stuff. Anybody else thinks this is a little on a flat side? Okay, so how do you go about tuning drums? They're so short often that they might not have a clear tuning, and sometimes, or most of the times, drums, for instance, a typical kick drum has whatever really like third, fourth, fifth octave frequencies, and then it just really quickly dives down to, you know, the first octave, or, you know, to the 60 or 40 hertz era or area, and just while the pitch goes down, the volume envelope goes down as well. So if you give that kick drum, say, or whatever drum sample to an pitch analyzer, they can't really determine the pitch that you will hear. So the difficulty really is to determining it from here. Sometimes I have better days, sometimes I have not so good days. But what I most often do is I might do something like this. I have a keyboard here, and I'm going to be doing something as stupid as that, because if I'm just working on the track, I hear the harmonics or whatever, the chord in my head. I sort of randomly press something, and then I might press play, and I listen, and I start like humming, and then I go often minor, like, and I try to hear and imagine what 3 notes basically would fit this, or what does this sound like to me. And now it could be the F minor that I was playing, but I don't know. Nope. It's not actually far off. But this is what I do often when I don't know, or when I'm not sure. I'm just sort of vibing, because it's really hard to measure it accurately, like scientifically. I just... Is that pleasant? So do you agree that that would be somewhere close to the... Andremia, hey. So, I don't know. Sometimes I think that I just hear voices in my head, but a lot of times you definitely can find something with that. Trusting your ears rather than... I have to be honest, I've tried several of like sample tuning slash, you know, well, auto tuning, or they find what the tune is, whatever you... key finders, and yes, you know, you have a string patch or whatever, and that has a clear note, even half a second or whatever, and that is easy to find out for the current algorithms, but the kicks and other drums are harder. And I highly recommend being aware of that. Sometimes you can get away with just not tuning stuff at all, just tossing a kick drum in and it fits perfectly and nobody gives a crap. But it could also be a very hindering factor technically if the kick drum tuning doesn't jive and it's a long kick drum, and then you wonder why your bass line doesn't work but it's been sucked out by the kick drum, or there's a huge buildup of frequencies there, and it just mix-wise does not work. The same goes when you get like a hi-hat loop with has some percussion in it. You know, if those little blips and blops or congas and bongos and toms or whatnot, if they're in a wrong tuning, it just doesn't do anything good for you. You know, you might be like, hey, cool hi-hats or shakers or whatever it is that you're looking for, like top end stuff, and they are good. But then at some point, you know, you could be like, why is this track not working? And a lot of times it could just easily be wrong tuning of some percussive elements. And it definitely is worth paying attention to those, and especially today, because you can slice stuff, whether it's Logic or other DAWs, you can slice stuff to their 16th or whatever transient, you know, slice them to bits, and then you can tune separately those certain parts. Paying attention to that as well, though, because if the earlier hi-hat, for instance, continues where the next sound that you're going to be tuning, it continues overlapping that, then you'll be tuning the end of the hi-hat as well. So that presents a little bit of a problem as well. So you might want to try and see if you can find the hi-hat clean, or if you can just ditch that hi-hat and put a similar one in that is on a different track that you can so cut low end on sub. I'm not sure what you mean. Let me see. And yeah, one more time, if you have a drum sample that you like, be the kick drum or a snare or something, but then it has the wrong kind of, like, you know, you can't get it to sound tight and punchy enough, for instance, but you like the sound of it. Often the sound doesn't come from the low sub end of it, but it comes from, you know, the mids or upper mids or something like that. There's a rattle, or there's some sort of a clung or whatever it is. Well, then you can find a kick that is really thick and big and boomy and punchy and whatever, and you cut out everything off that, say over 500 hertz, and then of your sample that you like, you cut everything out from under the high 500 hertz. So you have two things that now support each other, and you get the sound you like, or the rattle you like in that sound, or whatever it is, and then you get the low end for it. Yes, so I would, like, this is not maybe the best example, but still, if you, well, let's see this. That's a bassy sound. If I were to put this loud on the mix, this is now, you're now hearing only the low end of the sound, right? Only the low end. And with this envelope here, I'm able to make it go 0 in the beginning of the 1, and then it goes up like that. And then above, say 237 hertz now, it's still pumping, but not as much, and the curve is a little different. And now it's not pumping at all because there's 0%, but I can make it pump 100 if I want to. So I would maybe leave this in the 40 range, and this is fully pumping. So now if you look at this, so there's the first 16th almost the full first eighth here is now open for the kick. And so now when you have the kick on, the low end of the bass and the kick are not clashing, because when the kick is on, there's very little of that bass going on. You just simply don't need it there. And now writing Mofolk music, thank you. So Vibor, does that make any sense? Welcome Raiders. And so what this does is that if I now take this off, now the frequencies are piling up where the kick is, and it doesn't sound good. But when you put the sidechain pack on, you notice that there's room for it. Yeah, now I notice a raid because there's all kinds of shit on the chat. Okay, yes. So, and remember, this is both for the sound and for mixing. You don't have to make everything pumping so that you hear it. And that's, for instance, why here you could just leave this. Now you technically just hear bzzz, right? But this is making room for the low end every time there's a kick. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, because this doesn't affect this anything that I've set here now, for instance, above 237 hertz. It doesn't affect the mix or the kick in frequency space wise that much at all. So you could leave this pumping way less, and you would perceive it as going on almost all the time. Yes. And now, so if you look at the analyzer here now, or the visual representation, when I mute the kick, you'll notice that the first 16th, the first eighth is actually there's very little low frequencies, because when the bass comes in on the second eighth, really, then you notice the waveform has, bigger lower frequencies. So kick off. This part here, the beginning, is very much all high frequency. So that there's very little energy in where the kick should be. So that's why the kick fits really well in the pocket it is. Mm-hmm. All right. And now, so one more thing about for you guys to remember, and if you're not familiar with exactly what I'm saying, I'm going to complicate things here, because this is a plugin. Well, this one is an instance that I'm just looking at, but using on the bass here. This is a plugin that actually now I'm not using it in a sidechain mode. If you look at it, it says sidechain is none, meaning I'm not bringing any sort of signal into this that is triggering the compression, but it just does it with this envelope thing that you could draw various kinds of envelopes here. So sidechain compression in itself is actually a little different. This is sort of emulates it and gets rid of some of sidechain's annoying things, but also doesn't do the same thing as sidechaining. Sidechain means that if this was a compressor, I would actually take route the kick's audio signal to this thing's sidechain input, and then when it sort of, it's not physical of course, but when it would sort of physically hear the kick hit, then it would, according to certain parameters, push down the volume on this bass track. And you can do different things with it. For instance, if you use a sidechain trigger from the kick, then every time you don't have a kick, so if I mute the kick, or if in a different part of the track there is no kick, then the bass that was ducking during the kick is not ducking anymore, because there's no trigger signal at all. You can use that to your advantage if you want to, but most of the sidechain triggering or sidechain pumping type of stuff I do is actually this plugin. And then if I need it not to be pumping, then I just automate the mix. I apply sidechaining to everything. Like I have, probably in a regular project, I have easily tens of these shaper boxes doing various things. Most common, just ducking to a various curve on the fourths. So just do like to a beat ducking. But I can also do, and most of the time it's not full frequency ducking, but I duck all the low end out from under the kick on almost any and every sound, and then to a various degree above, say 500 hertz or maybe 1000 hertz, depending on the sound. Because most of the time I want to make that space for the kick, so that mixing is easier and you get a fuller and louder and whatever sound doing that. But then also I don't want, say, a big lead sound losing all of its bottom end throughout. So I don't want to EQ that lead sound to be thin enough so as to fit in the frequency pocket I want it to. I can leave it bigger and thicker, meaning more low end on it between the kicks, and that's where I perceive the sound is thicker all the time. It just makes room mixing wise to the kick more. But then there are certain things that I want to be sounding like it's pumping, like a lot of the pad sounds, something like this here. This is an 8th note, din, 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 but then I want to have it fourth note pumping. So you check this out. Now it's on every 8th. But then, because I also want it to sound like it's every 8th notes, I don't duck the high end all the way. By the way, this has 3 frequency ranges if you want to use free ranges of bands. But so now you still hear the first one as well, but it's not as thick, or it's so however you want to. you could easily group them if you want to. If you want to do the same exact pumping for all your bass sounds, yeah, I use it in my bass bus often. I mean, I'm maybe not the most, ergonomic or, well, what would be the word? Economic user, because sometimes I might have on all of my bass sounds, I would have a shaper box of some sort, but then I realized that when I listen to my bass bus alone, at some point in a mixing phase, I realized that there's still too much bass on where the kick should be. So I might add another shaper box to the kick bus itself. Or I might bounce stems, and then when I go to my stem mastering project, I might do it there. Or I might do it there for a synth or pad bus still, like just on top of it, on top of that. Like, yeah, there's no really wrong, well, there might be a wrong way of using it, but if it sounds good, it sounds good. Yes, absolutely. You can trigger different things with MIDI on Shaperbox, and I can be honest, I've tried it, but I don't really use it too much. And what I see that what I could see myself using it for, it would be actually sort of like live effects unit, like for cutting or yeah, like shaping, having a pad do something and then have different curves programmed on different MIDI notes, and then you would go like, first it would do an eighth note pumping or stutter, because you can control the time, the width, the pan, crush. What else is there? There's 6 things that you can control, or you can shape. So you can do all of that with. But when I'm producing, I don't need that sort of thing changing in mid track or. But I know what you're saying. Wrong way of sidechaining is 400 millisecond attack. Well, if it works on the track, maybe not. I'm definitely ducking the hi-hats and loops as well, depending on exactly each track, each channel in it. Sometimes I don't need it, but sometimes there is an amazing hi-hat loop that has a little bit of low end, like it's, whatever, who made the loop doesn't have the kick filtered out totally, or it wasn't edited so that it didn't have kick, it wasn't only a top end loop. Rather than going through manual audio editing, for instance, I could just simply have a low end sidechain ducker on it, have the benefits of all the other sounds having the low end if they need it, but then the kick I could either totally duck out full frequency range, or I could duck it out with either the filter on the shaper box or the volume, but then I could still have the snap of it used if that snap was something that added nicely to my track. All right, cool. What do I think of the new Logic update? I think it's fan-freaking-tastic. I haven't actually had too much time to play with it yet, but the sampler The new sampler, oh my goodness, I'm so excited about that. Just sampling either auto sampling or manually sampling anything that I want, my hardware stuff. It's going to be so much nicer, so much easier. How about my robot eye? It's going to be so much easier because you can either auto sample stuff or you could just play the notes that you want on one track, record it live, and then toss it in a sampler. It slices it, it recognizes the notes, it auto makes the instrument, and boom, you're ready to go. I've used the I have the auto sampler that was only part of Mainstage earlier, and it's incredible, but now it's directly in Logic. That's fantastic. And what I'm also really excited about is the simpler, or the quick sampler, which is similar to simpler in Ableton Live. Just one sample and do whatever you need with it so quickly, so easily. And the fact that it now has Flex Audio in it, I'm so happy about that. That's I can't even express how cool that will be when you get into that workflow and it works so quickly and automatically. It skips so many steps of manual tinkering. Is it hard to work from DAW to DAW? It's irritating, but it's not hard. It was hard working from studio to studio 20 years ago, if you want to put it that way. It's anything and everything today is sort of easy if you just black and white compared to back in the day. But yeah, everything could be easier. I would prefer all my collaborators were on Ableton, on Logic, and would have exactly the same plugins that I do, but they don't. So you just bounce stuff to audio what you want, and if you go from Logic to Ableton, you bounce stuff to audio, and then you send them the MIDI, and if you want to, you can send them presets on your main synths, and then they can open it in that end and use the MIDI and get as close or as far as they want from what I did. So it's not that big a deal, because again, I'm saying this fully admitting that it sometimes irritates me that I work in a different DAW than somebody else does, and then if we collab, there's a hassle exchanging the files and working together. It's not as immediate as it would be if it just was the same exact DAW and plugins and just opening the Dropbox thing. But that also helps in many ways, because then there's stuff that has been committed already, and you just get stems or tracks and you go from there, and it just goes step, and it's not that easy. Go backwards, and you also then just get inspired on that limitation, and don't think about the possibility of that is a problem with current DAWs, that you can always tweak something. So that's one of the reasons, by the way, why I have my Moog here now, and I've activated using Nord Rack, the JB8080, and also the MS2000, because when I use those, it makes me think a little more towards having to find the best sound that I can out of them if I'm using them. And then at some point early on, I need to commit. So I need to record them to audio. And that means that it's not that easy or that simple to just go back at any point you want. You can, because I'm saving the MIDI and I'm saving the settings of the synth, but still, it's not as easy as with plugins that you just delete and blah, 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 and do undo and this and that. So that workflow could actually serve you as well when you have to commit. I have used Ableton quite a lot, actually. I have a Push 2 here. I just did a live gig last week with, or the week before with Ableton. I think, my dear people, I think that is it, unless you have some specific questions. I maybe should save this because it turned out quite nice. I wonder where I've heard that before. It doesn't sound like Feel the Beat at all. I just started biting into this, and yeah, it gets a little brown, but yeah, doesn't bother me. So yeah, thanks guys for following me. Thank you for hanging out. This, I really am aware of the things, or sort of the things that I do here. I do the DJ stuff on Fridays. I might at one point add more DJing. I don't know. DJing is the crowd pleaser because people can just jam and listen to it. And I know this is sort of specific stuff where you need to kind of like or be interested in production to follow this kind of thing, because I'm not just full time playing something. But so I appreciate you guys hanging out with me and asking questions and whatnot, because I get something out of this as well. It's nice to be talking and sort of picking like-minded people's brains. I also am very happy about whoever of you are hanging out on those Wednesdays when I take your questions on the WhatsApp and call some of you guys and have my cool and talented buddies join in a convo. That's really cool. It's nice for me to actually hang out with them, you listening in, and sort of recapping our friendship or business relationship or whatever it is, and showing you some of that. I feel personally, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel that's kind of valuable, and it's kind of, if I would get an insight into somebody's, personal and professional life like that, that would be highly interesting, especially if I was, 20 years ago had that. So that's why I think that it's cool. But then the DJing obviously is also on a different level the most fun for me, and then it's cool to just jam for those 4 or whatever hours. One thing that I'm going to add at some point is I'm going to add a track feedback section, and it might also include, in some cases, like fix my mix or fix your mix kind of thing. And this is something that is going to be free for everybody to watch and like now, but I'm actually going to probably do it so that if you're a subscriber, then you are eligible for that track feedback and breakdown, or because then there would be a little sort of incentive to be a subscriber if you will. You absolutely don't have to, but then also because I would be sort of working for, you know, helping you out, whoever wants their track picked apart and maybe some help with it or opinions on it. And I don't know what you guys think of that. Morwick subs, wow, that's awesome. And the streaming is conflicting thing because I don't want to be like asking for money for this kind of thing, because I do it anyways and I like doing it. But then I think specialized things like actually taking the time to go through tracks and comment on them, hopefully giving something smart insight wise on them, that would be very useful. And I think not everybody needs to sub for that, because not everybody has tracks. So then those people who do sub, that probably could be useful. And remember, if you are here and you don't follow me yet, that doesn't cost a thing. That absolutely should be your first thing to do. Click the follow button. And if you liked what you had today, please feel free and share to your buddies and like-minded people. The more the merrier here, and we have such an amazing community. You guys are 95% well behaved, and even those 5% here and there, it's kind of all right. You know, we'll have people who handle the 5%. And also my Discord, with the addition of subs being eligible for track feedback, I think I'm going to do the same thing on Discord. There will be at least one place for Twitch subs only, one channel. And that's going to have something like an extra 5 minutes or extra half an hour here and there of chatting among the subs and something like that. That's coming sometime very soon. One more last thing. So the Cableguys giveaway, that's been going on the last 2 weeks, and I've had some nice action on Discord for that, because I made it so that the shaper box that I've talked about today a lot. By the way, I don't get money for that. I paid for my shaper box initially. This two they sent me before it was released for me to check it out. But I just love the plugin itself. They're not paying me off to say this, but they were kind enough to give me some giveaways, and I've given away 6 by now, and I've got a couple more left. So there is wait a minute, I wrote it down somewhere. God damn it, I can't find it right now. Red Lion 91 and K-Traps, I'm going to be messaging them. They will have instant licenses for Shaperbox 2, and because they hopped on my Discord and they're now my Discord members. If you guys want to have a shot, there's 2 more left after this one. Hop on the Discord, and I believe it was the general channel, hopefully. Say hi there and say, I want Shaperbox 2 if you want it, and you might be one of the last 2 that will get Shaperbox 2 bundle license. Rob, check this out. Check this out. We have a vanity URL, Rob. You can use yours if that's yours, but you can also use the vanity one. I was verified last week on Discord, so now I'm legit. What else is there? All right, guys, that is enough of me yapping. See you on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Finnish time, and I'm going to be trying to get a hold of some Finnish peers of mine that are rocking Twitch right now. Last week wasn't good for them, and luckily Paavo was around. And while Paavo wasn't my second choice, he's always my first choice. Everybody is, but sometimes I don't get the one that I think of for that this week. But I'll see if I can get my duo for this week that somebody already asked last week. All right, now I'm out. Now I'm out. Later, guys. More week. Aha. Is behind lock and key. Oh, so guys, sorry. Anyone else in Ruben around? Not that I don't want to raid him, but I just did the other last week maybe, so definitely could do him. I like him a lot. Anyone else? Yeah, Anjuna. Is Ruben doing production? Let's do Ruben if he's producing. Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. I would. Let's do Ruben. You game with that? That's going to be quality music then. I'll hit that. Anybody, everybody, come with me. Let's go say hi to Ruben. Let's go.